This is Kazbegi, about 100 miles north of Georgia's capital, Tbilisi, and barely 4 miles from the border with Russia. Getting here from Tbilisi, there's mile after mile of rugged, high mountain scenery with lakes, snow-capped peaks, and villages with old Christian churches.
I made the trip in a minivan or marshrutka, and the 3+ hour journey seemed to fly by.
There were some unexpected stops, including a castle on a lake and an almost surreal Georgia-Russian peace monument overlooking a breathtaking mountain pass. I say surreal, given Russia's unrepentant incursions on Georgian territory since the latter's independence in 1991.
One of the unusual things about this town is that, as gorgeous as it is, and as popular as it is as a mountain getaway, there are very few specific landmarks here that people come to see. It's all about nature. People come here to explore natural treasures that are household names in Georgia, even if they are as yet under-recognized.
Among them are Trousseau Valley and Juta Valley, with their alpine meadows and incredible high mountain trekking opportunities, and scenic Darial Gorge, which separates Georgia and Russia. There's no such thing as a bad view in Kazbegi. That applies to my guest house, the Milky Way, a comfortable and cozy place with a spectacular view of the town and the mountains.
See some very interesting old structures here, including this old Georgian Orthodox church where I'm standing in front of the gate. But the gate is locked, and if you peer up over the wall, you can see that the front door is padlocked. So it's impossible for someone like me to wander along here and know whether or not this church is even still in service. The beautiful old building that I'm looking at now, and I'll show you because I can't get inside, but raise the camera up and you can see it. It's, I believe, a museum, but it too seems to be closed. You'll hear this community referred to by two names, Kazbegi and Stepantsminda. The original town was named Stepantsminda in honor of a Georgian Orthodox monk named Stefan. But in the 18th century, after Imperial Russia imposed control over the region, the local Georgian feudal lord, who did Russia's bidding, adopted the surname Kazbegi. And before long, people started calling the town Kazbegi. The Soviets officially changed the name to Kazbegi in 1925. In 2006, 15 years after Georgian independence, the name of the townlet was changed back to Stepantsminda. The larger municipality retains the name Kazbegi. And these days, in the popularity war over what to call the place, so far, Kazbegi is winning. Kazbegi is like a little jewel box, surrounded on all sides by these lofty mountains. But to appreciate it fully, you need to view it from more than one angle. And I'm at maybe the best vantage point of all, on a mountaintop at 7,500 feet elevation, directly overlooking the town.
Gergeti Trinity Church is an iconic symbol of Kazbegi Stepantsminda, as majestically situated as one could imagine. You see it here to the left of Mount Kazbek. You can hike up a steep mountain trail to get there, but most people go by minivan, or as I've done with my friends Ronnie and Adi, by taxi.
When you think of what it took to build this church on this rocky perch in the 1300s, it really makes you appreciate the ingenuity. When you consider all of the heavy stones that had to be brought up here and placed, with no supporting infrastructure from down below. Just who built this church and the reason it was put here remains a mystery some 700 years later. But whoever did wanted to make a statement, because from an aesthetic perspective, it's hard to imagine a church or any building for that matter, in a more splendorous location. This building is perched below eternally snow-capped Mount Kazbek at 16,581 feet elevation, the tallest mountain in this part of the Caucasus. One 18th century Georgian author wrote that in times of danger, precious relics from Mishketa, the country's first capital, were brought here for safekeeping. The thinking was that besides being in the middle of nowhere, the church was so high up on the mountain that no one would bother trying to get up to it. Even though it was shut down during the Soviet era, it remained a popular tourist attraction. Making the trip to the top of the mountain to see it is a rite of passage when visiting Kazbegi. Inside is what I would have expected. A 700-year-old church, largely unchanged. And although it's seen a very volatile history, having been closed down during the Soviet era, it is again a Georgian Orthodox church. It is dark. The light that you see against my face now is coming in from the outside door. The only visible light here are candles. And trips to this mountain serve a double purpose for trekkers and outdoors enthusiasts. The mountaintop is a favorite staging area for treks to the Gergeti Glacier, which extends down the southeast slope of Mount Kazbek. I came up with my two Israeli friends, Adi and Ronnie, and to my surprise, as I was about to come down from the church, Adi, who had planned to go to the glacier, made a game time decision not to, because she's having some trouble with your shoe, right?
Yeah. You should listen to your parents when they tell you to buy new shoes.
Yeah, her hiking boot sprung a leak and the glue was not fixing it, so she waited to hike back down with me, which is fine. I love the company.
Yeah, me too.
Even though it's going down, it's not the easiest. Well, the trail is going to be wet for a little ways. We've got water gushing up out of a container. I don't know what that is other than it's coming maybe from an underground spring. Unusual, to say the least. You would not know that you were anywhere near the church at the top of the mountain because we're descending into a canyon. I'm learning fast that there's no place in this area without spectacular views. Well, I have no idea the story behind the tower that you see here. It is obviously centuries old, probably associated with an old church or monastery. We'll know in a minute. Maybe there's a structure or some ruins there. And as I'm walking to the side of this tower, I'm beginning to see Kazbegi down below. So I don't think there's another structure on this hilltop. This is just a knob with this wonderful old tower that looks like it was once taller, but that maybe was never completed. Hard to know. Well, we've made it to the bottom. It was maybe an hour and a half, and it was more than I was expecting. What about you?
It's amazing. It was amazing. and it was better to see the view while you walk down instead of going up.
Definitely a lot easier to walk, but I was just surprised by this generally. I thought it would be sort of a, I don't know, a pedestrian walk down from the church, but it turns out that it's through like a wilderness area. And as I said before, there's just no bad spots here for scenery. It's all just magnificent. So, well worth it, huh?
Yeah.
So we've come back down into the village, as you can see, and life is laid back here for sure. The animals share the streets with humans, and I must say these cows that I've seen all look very healthy. Hello.
Hello.
How are you? I think I accidentally turned my camera around on these nice ladies sitting in front of that house, and they weren't keen on that, but that's okay. I understand. My bad. Some of the older houses here, as well as elsewhere in Georgia that I've seen, have these wonderful tile roofs, and I've noticed that has largely gone away in terms of modern construction. It's probably just too expensive. You have these wonderful old houses in villages like this that still have their pitched roofs. They may be metal, but that's the big change. These wonderful old rock houses are not only abandoned, they are derelict. They were fine homes a century ago, but today they're relics. And this entire neighborhood is filled with this kind of construction. What do you think that's a house, right?
I think that house that people live in.
Yeah.
And that was a house.
That was a place. Hey, our friend's following us. He's stopping at the garbage container. It's kind of surprising that the trail coming down off the mountain just sort of lands in a residential area. This neighborhood is sort of separated from Kazbegi. There's the church high up on the hill, but we're still descending, and up ahead I believe we'll come to the river.
A short distance north of Kazbegi, Darial Gorge is another great place to disappear into the outdoors. To get there, you go through a series of tunnels and emerge to the sight of freight trucks lined up to cross into Russia.
The border crossing here is about 1 kilometer away, and it's most unusual. It's inside a tunnel. There's no border town on either side. Beyond this tunnel is the Russian town of Vladikavkaz, but of course you can't see it from here. Here on the Georgia side, there's this Orthodox monastery complex, which is relatively new. It began to be built in 2005. Plans are to eventually construct up to 12 churches here. And so it's a rather surreal juxtaposition of a monastery along with rows and rows of mostly semi-tractor truck rigs waiting at the border to cross into Russia. The Darial Pass is one of only 2 crossings of the Caucasus Mountains, and for that reason this 8-mile-long gorge has been fortified since at least 150 years before Christ. Over centuries, this south side was controlled by Romans, by the armies of Alexander the Great and others. And during the long period of the Georgian precursor state of Iberia, This place became known as the Iberian Gate.
The trailhead for our hike into the gorge is a few hundred meters up from the border crossing and seemingly a world away from the busy highway.
We're on a trail to a couple of waterfalls. One lower falls and another a little farther up. It's been a rugged climb since we started this trail about a half hour ago. It is, needless to say, beautiful. There's another border near here that I haven't mentioned that's just a few miles away to the west. And that's the border with the so-called Republic of South Ossetia. It's a rugged enclave of fewer than 60,000 people. Georgians view it as Georgian territory unlawfully occupied by Russia. Only 4 countries besides Russia recognize the legitimacy of South Ossetia. What you have is armed soldiers on both sides patrolling yet another border just a few miles from here. Talking about the border crossing, seeing as how isolated it is, it's unusual in that it's the main border crossing between Georgia and Russia. You can get a sense of that as you travel the highway up from Tbilisi and you see all the truck traffic. Even in the town of Kazbegi, it was very surprising to me to see so many semis coming through, and then you realize that where they're headed. Just an enormous amount of traffic on that mostly 2-lane highway with some passing lanes. We've come to the lower falls, which is pretty impressive in itself. There's no bridge here across the stream. I've decided after some deliberation to err on the side of caution and not try to tippy-toe across those slippery rocks. I don't want to be wet and cold for the rest of the afternoon.
Next from Georgia, it's into the high country of the Juta Valley.